and welcome back. How you all doing? You'll have to excuse me, periodically I might end up going up coughing a little bit. Would like to have done this a week or so earlier, as I marked on the Twitter page, but a bit of a cold crept in. Well, I won't call it cold, apparently you call it a 3-week virus, so that's what I've been recovering from. Didn't fancy the idea. We got but still, we're recovered and we're back. Alright, in and amongst all things, as you know from the last video and many of the videos before that, it's not always about telling what, how or when to do a thing. If anything at all is said or relayed with a marginal element of instructions in there, I will always endeavour to include a why. So remember that childlike thing when you're always asked the why. Well, I like to include a bit of a why, because at the end of the day a lot of people like to know why something is happening. They've got all the information and whatnot, but it's why. So, we're back again, and it's kind of, well, this is actually going to be a short one at the end of the day. It's only really to kind of like catch up, see how you've all been getting along, how the information has fed its way through, and effectively how you received it and what it is you're doing with it. Now, since then, I've had a few global platforms have effectively picked up on what's going on and have started to run or otherwise accept what SCS is about, what it does. More importantly, what is being proposed. Now, those who have just recently joined, more so from the last video, you'll always find at the end of the video one or two little explanations. In the last video, at the end, it does explain what Shadowcrown is about. It does. That being said, it also goes to show that reading through documents properly and not taking everything simply on face value will reveal more about what's going on around you than what you would have first thought. Yeah. And that's what we did. It was 3 hours long, pretty much all in one hit, revealing all them little details and showing you exactly what can actually be achieved when you break things down and analyze them things a little bit more clearly. Yeah? Like we did with the commandments and the judge guide stones and a new suggested set of 10 guides, shall we call them, at the moment, for setting out a well-structured, well-rounded, shall we call it, social contract. Yeah? Now, granted, I'm fully aware of the fact that the 10 Commandments obviously will have come after many other agreements from in the past. Yeah? So, what we're doing is working with more well-known and recorded historical documentation. Yeah? Just to give prime examples. But you received them well and you understood. You understood exactly where they were coming from. You understood exactly what was being proposed. That's great. So thumbs up. From that, so if we move through this, it seems to be now that the church in themselves, or Catholicism, Christianity, has now come to realise that a part of trust within society, especially those who lead society, like to think that they're just copacetic or coherent with the laws that they set also. Okay? And it's from that we pick up an old thread, a few years old now, about some of the clergy's and priests' activities. So what they'd been up to and now progressively sorting out. the same vein, or within the same vein, it also shows that it can and has upset many people. It has. One of the threads of upset has come from within the Eastern realms, by shutting down various outlets, removing certain artifacts and scriptures. Okay. But again, when you start looking at it in a more, shall we say, it's not a real easy way of putting it. It's what happens when you start to betray trust. At the end of the day, people are going to express their ways in such a way, whereas it's, how can we trust the word given if the word given by those can't be trusted? Yeah? When you start looking at that, when I was looking at the actual response to the actual social side of things, with the church, or be it politics, and some of the actual social businesses that didn't work with social enterprises is the one I was looking for. When I actually start looking at those, there are a lot more people who are prepared to get on board and work with society in terms of human capital, knowing too full well that a lot of human presence within businesses is what makes the business, and how you treat your workforce will make the ultimate difference. Investing back into the business is not necessarily just in hardware, but it's within people behind the hardware. Yeah, so it's a full investment cycle. Keeps a business coming together. Now, looking at all of that, and those who have been keeping themselves on a straight and, I'll call this straight and narrow. I don't mean straight and narrow and absolutely true, because in today's day and age there's always going to be a bit of temptation about for people to explore with, and that's one of the things that I factored in to the actual 10 elements of the social contract, is that as long as it's done something, depending on what it is, as long as it doesn't break the law, as long as it's done in moderation, then it can help towards teaching us some wisdom. Yeah? If not experienced it yourself firsthand, which then in turn creates knowledge and then wisdom for others, but you can learn from the wisdom or knowledge of others. Yeah? So all of that is beginning to come together. And from within that also, and from the church side of things, and from the political side of things, more so reflective when we start looking across further west, is the court system, the judiciary. Ultimately agree, at the end of the day, that this should be more of an independent entity. There shouldn't be a political judiciary, because at the end of the day, removing that biasness allows for the judiciary to actually file judgment fairly, and it does, which again is part of the actual political aspects when we was talking about merit-based choices. And it is when you create certain isolations within certain segments of a country's economic or social and political makeup, then what happens is then you're able to then, utilising the expression, balance out society and how things shape and move along. Okay? So again, yes, so the courts now have seen and understand that, and have accepted it, and progressively it will work. However, as is with all things, as I've expressed throughout, even them themselves need to be subject to the law and scrutiny of the law if indeed they stray off a straight and true path. Yeah? After all, again, you're leading societies and dispensing discipline or fair judgment, and if that's done inappropriately, then you betray the trust, not only of society but of your peers. So you need to take that into consideration. Yeah? Quite literally, everything was straightforward. It's not about doing this all myself. It's not about trying to do or take on too much or take any limelight and whatnot. This is all about showing that you're doing a good thing, that information can funnel through and then be redistributed back out. And that is where the productive nature of a bottleneck comes in, is where you funnel stuff in, it gets sorted out, and then gets redistributed back out appropriately. It does. That bottlenecking, it should only actually be a filter, not actually a stopping point. Yeah. Some of you are also thinking of which, when I look at the structure of the actual document in itself, is you've received it well enough with the cryptic side of things. Yeah. It's not meant to be overly cryptic. It's pretty straightforward, very self-explanatory in most cases, and I see that some people have read it, they've understood it, and well, yeah, it makes absolute sense when you look at it in both a narrow context and a broad context. Yeah. And that's the other thing within it all, is with the detailing within it. I know people have begun to pay attention to it, and particularly the ones that one segment actually was paying attention to, which was the UB, or Universal Basic Income. The upshot of it all is that whilst it is a good idea, and yes, it is going to be something that needs to be worked through carefully, is that trying to embellish the truth or tailor the truth just to simply meet needs is not always a good thing. You will eventually get found out. Yeah. So the idea is whilst it wasn't a scathing attack, nor would I make a scathing attack unless it was absolutely necessary, it was just a general reminder that if you're one of those that like to pass on information and use information to support your case, then when you're doing so, make sure you do it right. Remember, all part and parcel of the academic path is that when you are doing these type of things, is quoting things in an appropriate manner. If you don't know how the appropriate manner works, then just make sure that people know that it's not entirely your work. This is the part that you've copied, and this is why you've used it. Okay? We're harking back to the beginning. Yeah? The whys and what fors. It instills and helps to build and develop a bit more trust for everybody. Yeah? It's for your benefit. Yeah? And once you understand that and accept it and follow through with it, as some are, so don't get me wrong, I'm not saying nobody is, once that starts to happen, then not only does it benefit you, but it benefits the much broader circles in which you have chosen to draw. Yeah? So, when we start looking at these public documents, when they come from the World Banking Group, I found through the news feeds that there is more documents coming through, particularly ones from the UN or United Nations. I've had a look through some of the segments of theirs for their up and coming document. This is also evident when we see movements towards sorting out the unfortunate and or misguided. Yeah? It's more about when it comes down to the prison side of things, the discipline side of things. So it ties in to the court side, it does the judiciary. It's not about persecuting people when taking away their civil liberties, it's about teaching a lesson. And if it's not teaching a lesson, then what is it for? It's teaching a lesson. The idea is there are certain things that are, well, there are a lot of things that are acceptable, and there are a lot of things that are unacceptable. Yeah? It's not about controlling people's lives, and you have to do this in a particular way. Everybody's going to have their own way of, shall we say, shaping and steering through their own life. But what a lot of people have to accept is that if you go too far one way, what happens is like within the expressions we were saying before in the document and throughout, is when you start to either deliberately or even accidentally remove another person's abilities to progress forward on and whatnot, just to progress yourself, then that becomes unacceptable. And then how far you go with that will determine how much is taken away when it's been addressed. Yeah? It's one of those fine balancing acts. It's an art within itself. It's not necessarily a science, so there's no hard and fast facts. The science in itself is the detailing, but the art of ensuring that people are treated fairly and people are disciplined in the right manner, which is the other thing which we will move on to, is what needs addressing, because other things have been noticed within the news themselves. We pick up on the actual judiciary side of things and the prison side of things and rehabilitation of it all, because that is kind of like a person hitting an all-time low, whether it be a sense of desperation or whether even if it's deliberate nature. Yeah? It's being able to filter out what's what. In some instances, 3 strikes and you're out kind of makes sense, but then you have the other side of it all about taking somebody's life for the sake of discipline. It's not nice, and I'm pretty certain as the years will pass by that a suitable resolve will be found for those who just can't quite get why the majority have put this discipline together, the judiciary system together. Yeah? Because at the end of the day, it's not about targeting people. It's not about micromanagement or targeting people deliberately. It's about ensuring that your life is lived to its fullest and in the most appropriate sense possible. Because, as we said in the last video, eventually when you do move on, and you will move on, however long that takes, it's what you it's within the existential side of things is the essence that you take with you. Yeah? Making sure that when that happens, you take the best of you with you. Yeah? But again, there's no hard and fast rules. There's no guidebook to life in itself. So we try, as is with wisdom, we try to teach each other in accordance to your expectations, teach each other how things work. Yeah? And that is eventually, again, to try and break or otherwise maintain certain status quos, when we're looking at the universal basic incomes, is looking at how things progress. It's looking at how things progress. Socially, economically, socially. The impact, cause and effect. Yeah? When then details become more clear, and those social enterprises or enterprises in which understand how human capital work and how them cyclic motions work, when they get on board, then yeah, we'll start to see something like the basic income come on board. Because again, we've got all this just-in-time system, we've got exploration, we're going we're going beyond our normal boundaries now, which basically means atmospheric side of the planet. In the biblical terms, Babylon was built high enough to the point where it's taken back down because the lack of understanding as to what will happen if you go too far. Yeah? Specifically too far in that period of time. Yeah. So now you're in this era, in this period of time, people are fully aware of what will happen. So we're now, because of that, we've reached a new boundary within our own minds, mental boundaries, our academic boundaries. We're now beginning to make a new set for ourselves. So we're going into space, whether it be the moon, to the moon, around the moon and back. Yeah. We're going to be requiring various AI technology. We're going to be requiring various levels of robotics. Yeah? So something will have to give somewhere, and they know that. Right? They're already there, so to speak. It's just working out them, detailing, and keeping it moving. Yeah? So don't be too surprised if something starts up and then it stops again. Right? The idea is people are told it's a pilot. And when you're told it's a pilot, you must expect an end date. Right? So don't fix yourself in concrete. As the saying goes, set your plans in sand. Yeah? Set your goals in concrete. Right? Because your plans will always change. Yeah? That's that part. Now, when looking at this, from the last presentation, the images and videos have started to come forward relating to some cultural issues, more so within the Asian bloc. That's a point up there because my map. Such as those surrounding those being one chap being arrested for sharing breakfast with his wife, as well as real-time images of the variations to ideals and dispensation of the law for those found guilty of a proven crime, which is what we were talking about, an eye for an eye. An eye for an eye could indeed eventually make a world go blind. Do you want that? Of course not. Everybody wants to be treated fairly. Yeah? But again, it's all these little things, cultural differences. I would certainly not want to change somebody's culture for the sake of progression. Maybe tweak them a little bit so it's more broadly accepted and people then can move in and out and experience them cultures, because that is what it's all about. The separation, segmentation of all these different cultures over the millennia, right, creates a diversity in not only both wisdom but in experiences and the tastes and various other lifestyle, well, just lifestyles, isn't it? And that's what it's all about. Yeah, being able to actually experience more than what's just simply in front of you. Yeah. And now looking at social contract elements as well as relating to the law that's given the lands, or law of a given land, the value which stands behind a sound social agreement, and that they are not as half as bad as what people first thought. This one we act back to, like say for instance, the Georgia Guidestones. We sat down, the pair of us, I brought them up, or rather I showed you where to find them, and we walked through them. And when you look at them, and you look at them with a clear mind and with the guidance of somebody else who's squarely in the middle and just wanting to help people move along, they don't actually look as bad as what they first seem, do they? For others it would seem on the face value that you've been trying to tell you what to do. It's not. It's helpful information. There it is. I'm not saying anybody's a cancer or anything, it's just don't become one. Yeah? Like when I put in the site 96 billion people. Well, looking at some of the land, whilst it can be terraformed, not all of it's useful, so it's not necessarily going to be 96 billion people. Hence the reason why looking at other planets, spread things out a little bit. Yeah, as long as you're not like a virus where you consume all the resources and then move on, like for instance within the theories of other videos of other cultural space races, you know, it's all there within the grasp. It's just remembering how do you want to be seen. Yeah. Yes, I agree. It'd be rather naive to think we're alone in the galaxy, or better, more so still, in the universe. So the question is, if there is, let's say there is somebody out there, another race out there, another form of culture, how do we want to be seen? How would you want to present yourself? Okay. Alrighty, so telling the truth, it now seems that folks are accepting that any information that is to be taken from presented a public document supplied by either a non-government organisation or a political entity of sorts should indeed consider that it is wise not to embellish or otherwise tailor the truth. could cover a lot, but again, it's just basically catching up. And that is, I can see shifts and movements. Political parties now realizing that, you know, people's minds are changing. Why people's minds are changing? Therefore, they're now having to adapt to more of a social enterprising point of view. In other words, people are important. Not any one particular person or peoples, as a whole, the entire planet at the end of the day. So people are looking at how to re-represent themselves or represent themselves to their audience. I'm not going to name any particular political parties, but two of which, and a third one just recently, has now begun to show, shall we say, that they need to make changes. So we are looking now at the entire pestle model now, aren't we? The entire pestle model is now beginning to work at all of this. And like I said from the beginning, a few moments ago, or 20 minutes ago, is that looking at the global platforms, politics, economics, society, technology, even environmental aspects and the law are now beginning to shift and shape in accordance to the next steps forward. Yeah, and that's what the 10 propositions were for, is to account for the next step forward. Yes, they need more refinement, and I will start looking at other documents and producing some of my own work to put out there for everybody. Right? So series 2 will come, and something else will be making its way into the social arena. Right, short, sweet, to the point. It covered everything in the last video. It's kind of a bit of a stopping block there. What I'll do is I will have a look around again, see what's going on, wait for some more of the NGOs and political entity documents coming through, and we'll revisit them here and walk through them together. Yeah? 30 minutes on here, recording time is just about to elapse. I think we've done quite well. We've changed the camera. I've had a new camera, and unfortunately I've done it during the day and there's a bit of glare going on there, so I might end up having to put a bit of a mask over the window just to stop some of the light glare. Otherwise I'll do it on night time again. Alright, well, thank you for coming back. Thank you for your time again. It's all panning out progressively, and you're all doing relatively well. You're all pretty good, actually. You know, keep up the good work. Whether it be a social enterprise, whether it be individual or individuals working towards achieving progressive outcomes within a project towards benefit of society and whatnot, judiciaries and various other political entities. Yeah. Take the time to take in the information, see what has been proposed, and you'll begin to see the path forward. Yeah, I know you can. I sit here, and we're getting there, and everybody else is benefiting from it. Yeah, there you go. Nearly 10 years, and we're getting there. It's slow, but it's sure. Yeah. You enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for coming back, and we will be back again soon.